Hello friends, and welcome to my new monthly series, You're Invited. This is a show that explores books and food together. As an avid reader, writer, and vegan, books and food are very important to me. So I thought it would be a lot of fun to roll them into one. In time, my hopes for this show is that it will evolve into something where I actually have other people here. We cook together and we talk about books that we've read. But for now, well, we all know the state that the world is in right now. So for the time being, you get me, and I have the pleasure of having all of you at my table. When thinking about a story that involves food in some prominent way, my mind immediately went to Chocolat. I remember being so drawn into the magic of the world that Joanne Harris had created in the movie that came out in the year 2000. I was 10 years old, and it always has been one of my favorite movies, though I haven't watched it in a while, and strangely enough, I never read the book, but now I have. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I am going to show you how I made the chocolate and bonbons that I've got in front of me. And if you would like to make them yourself, the more detailed recipe is in the description down below. And we're back. As you could probably see, these turned out a little bit messy, but they taste great. If you wind up making them, I would recommend a couple changes in the process that I went through. When I made these, as you could see, I poured the chocolate in, I put the filling, and I put the chocolate on top all in one go. But if I made these again somewhere down the road, I would probably add freezing in between each step. So like freeze that bottom and side layer, put the filling in, and the top, and freeze after, and I think that it would be a lot better. They would be easier to get out of the mold, and they would stay together instead of breaking apart. Also, if you grease the sides maybe, the chocolate mix already has coconut oil in it, so if you add a bit more, it wouldn't hurt. Okay, I started reading this book a few weeks ago. I think I mentioned it in my last video actually, but I got busy and I actually stopped about 50 pages in, then left it as I do with a lot of things, and I came back to it on Thursday and blasted through the last 250 pages, which actually turned out to be a really good thing because my brain has just been bombarded with Chocolat now. My mom and I watched the movie last night too, so it's really fresh in my mind. So Chocolat is a novel by Joanne Harris. It was written in 1999, and as I mentioned before, the film came out in the year 2000, so it was picked up really quickly. Harris puts the novel in the genre of magical realism, and personally I think that it's a pretty perfect example of the genre. To tell you a bit about it if you do not already know, transient mother and daughter Vienne and Anouk Rocher arrive in the fictional village of Lansquenet-sous-Than on Shrove Tuesday entering into Lent. They open a chocolate shop which tempts the conservative church-going villagers of the town into overindulgence and makes an enemy out of the curé of the parish, Francis Reynaud. Throughout the novel, we switch between Vienne's thoughts and Reynaud's thoughts, where their strong similarities and equally strong differences are really put on display. Both have a clear drive to help the town, but only one seems to really know how to give the people what they want, and that one happens to be Vienne, which drives the sleep-deprived and starving curé absolutely mad. As the story progresses, key characters from the village go through personal evolutions with Vienne's assistance. A grandmother reuniting with her grandson, a man coming to terms with the mortality of a beloved pet, a battered wife finally finding the courage to leave her husband. And we build up to the climax of the novel, which is a grand Easter chocolate festival, the definition of indulgence, hosted by Vienne, and all put together under the nose of Reynaud, while he only continues to deny himself further and just be completely loopy. Food, sleep, he'll have none of it. He'll keep taking it away even more anytime he sees something going wrong because he thinks that's going to be the answer when it's not at all. The novel addresses religion, happiness, the ties we have to the past, the concept of independence, all under this large umbrella of pleasure versus denial, or godliness versus sin, as Reynaud would like to see it. This is so good, seriously. Even if you're not into spicy stuff, I feel like you might like this. It seems odd, a very odd combination, but no, chef's kiss. So, while the novel itself is not what I would call complex, it is well executed, and I could tell in the first few pages that Harris must have taken cues from personal experiences and places that she'd been, people that she's known. The town is fictional, as are many of the characters, but when I did my bit of research after reading, I found that Vienne's daughter Anouk and her invisible friend Pantouf the kangaroo, they are based on Harris's real-life daughter and her Pantouf. Harris has also said that this was the first novel that she wrote as a mother, and I think that it comes across in a really nice and genuine way. Both Vienne and Harris, you can tell, spend a lot of time thinking about the matriarchy line through their family, and you see this translated into the novel very well. Going back 2 generations, Harris has dedicated Chocolat to her great-grandmother, a strong influence who was lively and eccentric and inspired more obviously Armand, but also Vienne herself. In reading an archived page on Harris's website, she describes what she wanted to address when writing Chocolat, and I believe that she perfectly accomplished those desires. To quote her directly about her intentions, I've got a little thing written down here. So she says, "Easter to me has many memories and associations, all of them French. Elaborate carnivals, egg hunts in my great-grandmother's garden, the story about the flying bells, the exquisite displays in the windows of the confiserie and patisserie, the Catholic Church, of course, still so influential in French communities, and chocolate. It seems very strange to me that Easter should now be so closely linked with fasting and self-denial. Originally, Easter was a time of feasting and celebration and the rebirth of spring. The pagan traditions which still survive all prove it. And it's ironic, too, that we should have come full circle. The shops were never so full of temptations as they are at Easter. I wanted to write a book about that conflict between indulgence and guilt, with chocolate as the central metaphor. And what a good central metaphor it is. Harris also goes on to describe how she wanted to write about people, and how the arrival of a single individual can so deeply affect the internal politics of a community. Finally, she wanted to write about magic, but not in the mainstream popular view of it, but about the magic of everyday things. Harris's exploration of humanity is beautifully done in this novel, where there are no real heroes or villains. By switching between Vienne and Renaud, the reader is given such access to their thoughts that even if we are rooting for Vienne, we can feel empathy for Renaud with his dark past and his deep insecurities. Even though he's playing the role of oppressor, you know that at one time he has also been a victim. Simply saying that I loved this novel and that the author accomplished everything she set out to is not where my thoughts end, however. There were a few things that I disliked about the novel. I'll admit that maybe the film colored these opinions, but I really hadn't watched it for 8 to 10 years before last night. And I had really forgotten quite a bit of it, I realized, when we did watch it. So I can say with 90% confidence that I would feel this way even if I hadn't watched the film before. In her own words, Joanne Harris clearly states that the book is not to be set in any particular time. Her words are, "Nor is the book set at any particular time. I deliberately wanted to give it an old-fashioned feel, to suggest that this was a place where nothing had changed in many years, whilst retaining some elements of modern life. There are still many rural communities in France, especially in the south, where this remains a true depiction. But Chocolat was never intended to be an accurate representation of today's France. It is a France seen through a very selective, very personal filter, which has as much to do with nostalgia as with present-day realism." While after her first sentence she does allow space for some modern notes in the story, those notes really took me out of it. The mention of a microwave, of Disneyland, characters with bleached hair and piercings, they all just seemed wrong somehow and unnecessary to the story as a whole. If I were Harris's editor, I would have told her to take those bits out, because they really don't add anything, they just take away from the timeless mood. While this review is about the book, I do feel the need to address the film adaptation as I wind up a little here. This is one of those adaptations that is perfectly done. There is a great deal of the internal in the novel, which was one of my favorite parts of it, but it's hard to put that across in film format. And I think the film does a brilliant job of finding the tools to show thought processes in a more physical way. Like the addition of Vienne's Mayan scrying plate, which she spins for people when they come in. In the book, she has an intuition about people where she just feels what they're thinking or has images. And I think that if they had added her having visions, it could really have come off corny and done the same thing as the modern mentions through the novel, where it just takes you out of the story and it makes it more of a like, ooh, magic thing rather than mundane everyday magic, which was Harris's intention. There was also the physical representation of her mother rather than the thoughts back to her in the form of her ashes, which Vienne carries with her. Of course, there are also things that I disagree with in the movie. I don't like their changing of the curé into a mayor figure. I didn't really see the point of that. Maybe they didn't want to hit people over the head too much with him being a religious character and vilifying someone who's a religious character. That's what I would guess. There was also the removal of Charlie's story, which I thought was too bad, but I think they wanted the movie to be more feel-good. Like, they threw in some goofy things with a character who really wasn't that goofy, and so there's a lot of stuff like that, but it goes way too in-depth for my little book chat here. But whether you agree with me or not on the general success of the film, I think that anyone who's read the book and seen the film can probably agree that the image of it is not so very modern, and the timelessness of the story is part of what makes it so great. You may wonder when I'm going to get to Rue, the character that Johnny Depp portrayed perfectly in his usual charismatic fashion. Well, Rue is quite a bit different in the book. He's not this big dashing love interest, and I know Johnny Depp was a bit low-key, but if you read the book and compare the film, he's even more low-key. The character's even more low-key in the novel. He's more realistic. He's a red-haired man with a strong Marseille accent and a gruff, guarded attitude, which is much more appropriate to the type of character that he is. It makes sense that he would be more guarded and scared of these townspeople that he's kind of forced to interact with. He's hard to capture, hard to be friendly with, and personally that left me wanting to know more about him and have him drop his guard a little. Not to say that that should have been written, but that's just the feelings the character invoked, and I think that that was good. But I also like Johnny Depp's take. Couple funny stories also from Harris interviews. Juliette Binoche stayed in her house while they were filming to talk to her and get to know a bit more about the story. And Harris also said she got along extremely well with Johnny Depp, probably because she was not attracted to him, which I find very strange. I will not give away too much of this novel, and I hope that I haven't. I don't think it's one of those stories that you worry too much about spoilers, but I have definitely left quite a bit out. And I do recommend that you both read the book and watch the movie. I think you could do so in any order, but maybe read the book first. That's usually a good thing to do. One last thing I have to wonder about the love relationship in this book, or lack thereof, was if Harris divulged the secrets of her next novel to the filmmakers, as the story does take a different turn in the first 3 chapters that I read as a preview when I finished this novel. Or even more intriguing, I wonder if Harris took notes from the film. It's interesting to imagine the influence that both would have over the other, and I feel like it would be so strange as a writer to have someone else take over your story and do a film adaptation while you haven't finished the series of novels that you're writing, because you're going to be looking at what they're doing and taking from them. It would be a very strange position to be in, I think. So, on finishing the novel, I did not like the way it ended. To not say too much, we're kind of left with an uneasy protagonist. There isn't a feel of completion or contentment, which I guess makes sense since there were going to be more novels after this, but I do prefer this story as a one-off, and I love the way the film wrapped it up at the end. To conclude my review, Chocolat is an elegantly written little novel that actually wound up giving me a lot of ideas for my own novel that I'm editing right now. Where mundanity in magic is concerned, the description of dreams, the easy expression of inner thoughts, the film is one of my favorites. The two stand individually, both excellent in their own merit. They're creations that I really enjoy, and I can't recommend them enough. I hope you enjoyed my first of these little food and book chats. Maybe I'll have someone else on next time, depending on what our quarantine conditions are like. And please feel free to continue the conversation in the comments down below. Again, the recipe for these little bonbons and the chocolat chaud are also down there in the video description. As always, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell button so you actually get notified when I post a new video. And I hope that you are having a day that is as wonderful as you are. Goodbye.